Hormonal control of the female reproductive system. Both the ovaries and the uterus go through monthly cyclical changes that are controlled by hormones. For simplicity, our discussion and most diagrams assume that a woman's cycle is 28 days long, with ovulation occurring on day 14. It is important to remember that a woman's menstrual cycle may vary from 21 to 35 days in length, and ovulation may take place over the period of 2 weeks, from day 7 to day 21 of the cycle. The organs that produce the hormones that control the female reproductive system are the hypothalamus, the anterior pituitary, and the ovaries. The hypothalamus is part of the nervous system and part of the endocrine system. One hormone it produces is GnRH, gonadotropin, releasing hormone, which stimulates the anterior pituitary gland. The anterior pituitary gland produces tropic hormones, which have targets all around the body. The tropic hormones that work on testes and ovaries are FSH, follicle-stimulating hormone, and LH, luteinizing hormone. The ovaries produce estrogen and progesterone, which have receptors on the uterus and many other organs. As seen in the diagram on the right, the hypothalamus regulates the hormones of the female reproductive system, and the pituitary gland is the master gland controlling release of female reproductive hormones from the ovaries. However, the pituitary gland is also regulated. Inhibin, which is produced by the ovaries, inhibits the pituitary from secreting too much FSH. Hormonal cycles require both negative and positive feedback. Negative feedback is a process where the original stimulus that causes a hormone to be secreted is reduced. In effect, the hormones are released to keep their amounts at a relatively constant level. Positive feedback is a process where the original stimulus is increased. In effect, hormones continue to be released and their amounts increase until a desired effect is achieved. The hormone secretion is shut off when an outside process ends the secretion. How does negative feedback work? The hypothalamus secretes GnRH and the anterior pituitary secretes FSH and LH to control the menstrual cycle. These hormones stimulate the ovaries to produce estrogen and progesterone. When estrogen and progesterone levels rise, the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary produce less GnRH, FSH, and LH. This negative feedback keeps estrogen and progesterone levels constant from days 1 through 7. How does positive feedback work? Responding to elevated estrogen levels, there is a switch from negative feedback to positive feedback. There is a surge of GnRH that triggers the ovulatory phase of the menstrual cycle. FSH and LH, secreted by the anterior pituitary in response to GnRH, causes the ovaries to produce an egg and release estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone target the uterus, causing it to build up its blood lining throughout the month. Estrogen induces the pituitary to secrete more FSH, which signals the ovaries to produce more estrogen. This continues, and estrogen levels continue to rise from day 8 until about day 21 in the menstrual cycle. Carefully timed, overlapping chains of positive and negative hormonal signals result in the cyclical control of ovaries and uterus. The diagram below summarizes negative feedback during the early follicular phase of the menstrual cycle, the left side, and positive feedback during the late follicular phase, the right side. FSH and LH levels are kept constant during the early follicular phase due to negative feedback, but they surge during the late follicular phase due to positive feedback. How is hormonal control different if a woman becomes pregnant? Pregnancy causes the cells in the uterus to produce the hormone HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, which leads to the growth of the placenta and umbilical cord around the implanted embryo. Pregnancy also causes increases in progesterone and estrogen to sustained high levels. Which hormone controls labor and birth? When the fetus is fully grown and pressing down on the bottom of the uterus, the hypothalamus begins to produce oxytocin in waves. Oxytocin causes the muscles lining the uterus to contract. This causes contractions. When the uterus contracts, more oxytocin is released from the hypothalamus. This is a positive feedback cycle that ends when the baby is born. Oxytocin has many other functions in the body. It is sometimes called the hormone of love. It is a feel-good hormone that has the opposite effect of stress hormones. Which hormone helps with breastfeeding? Prolactin is made by the anterior pituitary during pregnancy. It continues to be produced as long as a mother is breastfeeding. Prolactin, along with oxytocin, promotes milk production and inhibits cycling of other hormones.